Welcome to the King of the Court podcast with Ben Riggs and Ben Staten.
But speaking of former greats coaching their team, the Dallas Mavericks. We mentioned earlier the fight with P.J. Washington and Najee Marshall against Yusuf Nurkic. Derek Lively's been out with a hip contusion. Luka Doncic is out for. He'll be reevaluated within a month. I thought that was an interesting distinction that I texted you about earlier because it had been reported that he would be out for a month and maybe he'll be reevaluated in a month, I should say. And maybe it will be a month. And, you mentioned like they may just be using within a month because they don't want to set a specific date. But either way, Jason Kidd's trying to coach this team without Derek Lively, without Luka Doncic, without P.J. Washington, without Najee Marshall, without Dante Exum. It's tough. Like Kyrie Irving went on a truly remarkable heater last night against the Trailblazers. I mean, ultimately it ended up being in vain, but he finished with 46 points. And shot 61% from the floor. It was insane watching. Like this guy could not miss anything, and he kept them in the game. Actually, brought them back. They were down by more than 20 at one point. But I think in watching Mavs Twitter, there is a lot of concern. I think you could say about the fate of this team as following the Luka injury and then the loss to the Trailblazers. The thing I would say is this: the Derek Lively injury is a short-term win. He'll be back in relatively short order. PJ Washington will be back for the next game, and then you'll get Najee back in 3 games. I think that this team, with the depth that they have, with Kyrie at the helm, Kyrie can carry the load. I don't have any doubt about that. And they move the ball well as a unit and find shots for each other. There's no question that they miss one of the things Luka provides for that team that is sorely missed is structure and organization. And without him, you can see that. But the team does function very well as a unit. They move the ball well. They find the open shooter, and they have a lot of guys on that team that can knock down shots, drive to the basket, and finish. I think that the Mavs are going to be fine during this stretch. And the thing that I really think Mavericks fans need to remember is that the best 5-man lineup in the NBA is Luka, PJ, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, and Derek Lively. Get those guys on the floor, right around the All-Star break, and this team's going to be fine. I don't think there is any reason for panic. I still think they're the best team in the West, and I will even throw in the silver lining. You will have Luka Doncic entering the playoffs this year with far less wear and tear on his body than he had heading into the playoffs last year. And I think that for any Mavericks fan who wants to see the Mavs make a deep run and return to the finals, that should be a huge silver lining for them.
So you're not at all worried that this the calf injury that Luka has is a sign, especially that since he's had some other muscle-related injuries in the past little bit, is something that's going to follow and sort of nag him for the remainder of the year?
Has he had other muscle-related injuries? I knew he had the sprained knee, but that was like the thing where him and Terrence got tangled up in the playoffs last year. And then he had the fall where he sprained his wrist or whatever it was. And then he had the calf contusion to start the season. The answer to your question is no, but I think that this is an opportunity for me to go on a bit of a tangent. I know this isn't what you were wanting to get at, but I can't resist. And you'll have to fill me in on the names of these people. I know Kevin O'Connor is the podcast. I don't remember who the guest was.
I think it was Big Was, Wozni Lambre. I think that was who you're talking about.
Okay. So you sent it to me.
Oh no, Tom Haberstroh. Tom Haberstroh.
Yep, it's Tom. Yep. I'm not gonna cast any aspersions. I'm gonna tell you what my 10-year-old son and his friend said. Like, so you sent it to me. My phone just happened to be connected to my car when you sent it to me. I clicked on it so they could hear it. And both of them, in a single voice. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. My son first says, "Dad, who are these people?" And I said, "It's the same two guys you heard last time, son." And then they both in one voice said, "They're idiots." And the point that they were making is that, once again, this is an example of Luka Doncic not being in shape. And my thing is this.
Specifically saying he walked like a 70-year-old man.
Yes. Yeah, they said he walked like a 70-year-old man. Well, that 70-year-old man won the scoring title last year. Goddamn near averaged a triple-double. Finished third or whatever it was in the MVP running last year. Carried his team to the NBA Finals. Won his got to his second Western Conference Finals. That was all just like months ago. Like, and we're suddenly talking about Luka because he has a calf strain, which, to be quite honest, like, in terms of injuries that would happen to a basketball player, not that uncommon. Like it and to claim that it's a result of him not being in shape. My problem with it is this. Even though this year, like, I think that some of the picking on Luka up until this point has been about, like, last year he won the scoring title averaging 34 points and he's averaging 28 this year. There's been a slight drop in efficiency, but that slight drop in efficiency comes at the very beginning of the year when he didn't have a training camp, didn't play any preseason. Like, so the fact that he would have a little bit of rust doesn't surprise me at all.
The reason he didn't have a training camp and that was that he was injured. So
we had the bruised. It was a bruise. Like, but that's my point though. Is like, that's not like you could be in the best shape you've ever been in your life, and if you just get hit, you just have a bruise.
Yeah.
And I also don't think the Mavericks are wrong, and I don't think Luka's wrong to say, like, yeah, in an 82 game season, let's just let the bruise heal. Like, there's no need to, like, rush him back. For the preseason. I think Luka will manage to get through the year without a preseason. And he gets into the regular season. There's a slight dip in efficiency. Absolutely nothing in my mind to worry about, because effectively what we're saying is, do you think that the guy who came into the league, won Rookie of the Year, and every year since then has been first team All-NBA and a perennial MVP candidate, has suddenly forgot how to play basketball? Like, no, I don't think that at all. And he comes back from the wrist sprain. I think he missed like 4 or 5 games, whatever it was. Comes back from the wrist sprain, and he's returned to form. He's like, the efficiency dip's completely been eclipsed. He's scoring at a relatively high clip. I don't think the scoring's ever going to return to what it was last year, and I don't think it should with the roster built the way it is. And so I think some of the criticism of him is just like knuckleheaded shit, where people are just talking to talk, and they've realized that shitting on Luka is clickbait for certain audiences. And getting in, but to go down the route, and this is where my tangent, I to be fair, I did preclude all of this by saying it would be a tangent. The two problems I have with it is, you're talking about a guy who has like historic usage rates, while simultaneously winning, not just winning the scoring title and being a top 3 MVP candidate, but also playing winning basketball, as evidenced by the fact that he got his team to the finals. And then to say that, well, they didn't beat the Celtics, is some citation against it being winning basketball is just the height of stupidity in my mind, because you made it to the finals. All right. But beyond that, which is a huge objection that I have to saying Luka's not in shape. Like, you're not playing you're not playing with that usage rate and putting up those numbers and winning basketball games if you're not in shape over the course of an 82 game season. But the bigger problem I have with it is, what's his name? Tom what?
Tom Haberstroh.
Habistro?
Yeah.
So Tom Habistro, I would bet you, has never been in the same room with Luka Doncic while he worked out. I would bet he's never watched a Luka Doncic practice. I would bet he's never been in a gym with Luka Doncic, has no idea what Luka Doncic does to maintain his body. I would even venture to guess. I mean, I clearly know nothing about the guy. I'm having to have you remind me of his name every time I need to bring it up. I would be willing to bet he has no medical training. He's not a physical therapist. He's not a physical trainer. He knows none of that. And so, and the reason your question, which if I remember correctly, which spawned this tangent, the reason it did spawn this tangent, but the question was, I'm not worried about the calf. The honest answer to the question is, I don't know anything about calf injuries, how they heal, what I need to do to heal them. I'm just assuming that you're talking about a 25-year-old elite athlete who's a professional basketball player surrounded by the best medical staff and physical training staff that you could surround someone like him with, and that based on his past, he's someone who, this isn't like Zion. He's not someone who's perennially injured and missing games. If I had to venture to guess what the cause of Luka's injuries are, I would say it has more to do with his physical style of play, how much contact he generates. And to me, like the wrist sprain, the calf contusion, that kind of stuff is explained more. The knee sprain in the playoffs last year, that kind of stuff is explained more by that physical style of play. And you have a one-off here where, he just had an injury that I would suspect is somewhat routine in the course of a career for a professional basketball player. And if you remember 2 years ago, the other injury that sidelined Luka wasn't even really an injury, and the Mavs got fined for using it to basically tank their season, which resulted in them getting Derek Lively.
Luka's body is a stupid side. It's a red herring. The question we should be having is this decline in efficiency of like 3, 4, 5% in true shooting? Is that what's the root cause of that? Is that just because he was cold? He's been really streaky this year. He's always been a streaky player, but like that's what we should be focusing on as a conversation. Like not like, do we think Luka Doncic is overweight or not? It's the silliest conversation to keep on having. He's now in his 6th year, you said. He's been this way for years. He's been good while he's been this way for years. We don't have enough of a data set yet to determine, as Tom Haberstroh and Kevin O'Connor were doing, so definitively that these injuries are related to his physique. Like with Zion, we can tell it pretty clearly. He gets these freaking hamstring injuries every time he plays 50 games, like 30 games in a row. It's a fact.
Well, I mean, like you mentioned the hamstring injury. Like, I mean, an example of why I don't like the conversation about Luka's, fitness and conditioning and all that stuff related to the injury is it's like LeBron had, I can't remember, 2010, 2011, 2012. He had a strained hamstring, missed some games as a result of it. Like, who in the hell was out there saying like, dude ain't in shape? Like, you know what I mean? Like, basketball players are going to get these injuries. That's just a fact. Like, it's going to happen to all of them. Like, when you're playing the position that he's playing and doing with your body what he's doing, you're going to experience some of these injuries.
Absolutely.
As far as the efficiency goes, like, once again, I think the simplest explanation for someone who has been called by some the greatest offensive basketball player they've ever seen, but like someone who was rookie of the year, someone who was first team All NBA 5 years in a row, to have a slight dip in efficiency, like the simplest explanation seems like the best explanation to me, because otherwise I'm having to explain how someone went from being basically just kind of forgot how to play basketball. Like the simplest explanation is he didn't have a preseason and he didn't have a training camp, and there was just a little bit of rust. And then once he came back from that little 5-game stint, he was actually, like, if you look at the stretch he had there, it was better than what he had last year.
Do you think the Mavs should make a move at the deadline? I think it's pretty clear now them and the Thunder are the two top teams in the West. I think, that's probably pretty clear.
I think we're at a point though where, in terms of being completely honest, like, it's fair to throw the Grizzlies in that conversation.
If the Grizzlies aren't constantly hurt, the problem wasn't about tonight, which is they end up continuously missing 6 of their 7 best players at all times. And so yeah. But I agree with you. I think that they, interestingly enough,
at full strength, like part of the reason I say, if we're going to be intellectually honest in the conversation, is that, like, currently for us to say that about the Mavs, we're obviously having to say it. And I'll take
the victory lap. I was the one, in our beginning of the year podcast, I said the Grizzlies were going to be the team that were going to overperform. Yeah. And I think, they clearly believe that they have a win, that they have a shot, because they were one of the teams that was in the Dorian Finney-Smith trade that we'll talk about later at the end of this pod. And they were the rival before the Lakers at the end. But I think, like, if I had to do my tiers right now, I think I would be tier 1A would be Dallas and OKC. Tier 1B would probably be Memphis. And then there's this large grouping in, and tier B, which is like 6-7 teams, who all beat each other in any night. That's how I would kind of see it. But
I agree completely.
And I think that one of the things you're seeing is OKC seems interested. Well, they're interested in at least exploring a move. Memphis is actively exploring moves. Should Dallas explore something? Do you think that that looking at the trade market right now would make sense?
I wouldn't close anything down. I have heard some ideas that I would close down, but like the idea that, like, we're just not open for business. Yeah, I wouldn't be like that. I'm really, really, really bullish on this team. And just to, like, recap the reasons real quick, and then we'll entertain what you're saying. Like, I'm basically saying, like, do I wish Luka was hurt? Absolutely not. But, like, I still believe that you're talking about, one of the top 2 or 3 best offensive players in the world, possibly the best offensive player in the world. I mean, Giannis with his defense puts him, in a different category in terms of, like, a two-way player. But, like, Jokic and Luka, to me, are offensive weapons really unseen before. Like, it's unbelievable. And I have no doubt in my mind that he will return to that form. And when you look at who's playing alongside him, last night in the losing effort against the Timberwolves with a horribly undermanned roster, Kyrie Irving reminded you why he's probably the second most dangerous.
Timberwolves.
I'm sorry, you're right, Blazers. Kyrie Irving last night against the Blazers reminded you why he's probably the most dangerous second option in the league. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can score from anywhere on the court, and score in any way imaginable. And so, like, I look at that, and then that coupled with Clay shooting on the perimeter, and then the depth that you have, and also sort of the two-headed monster in the middle with Gafford and Lively. And then the depth that you have with Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes, Spencer Dinwiddie. Like there's just an awful lot that team can do, with Maxi Kleba, and we'll talk about him in a minute too, I'm sure. But, like, there's an awful lot of versatility. They can match up in a bunch of different ways. And so I'm really bullish on this roster. I do believe that when you get down to the 6 or 7 spot on the 7-8 spot on the roster, you start to see the potential for upgrades. I've been really intrigued by what I've seen from Omax Prosper thus far. He's very raw. And generally speaking, when you see a very raw player who's able to put together spurts of really good basketball, like you see sort of a diamond that needs to be carved out of that. And so I'm very intrigued by what that could be in a couple of years. But in terms of this year, I think he's pretty far down the pecking order. And I actually think this stint without Luka is giving extra minutes to people like Grimes and Najee Marshall and players like that that are going to help get them ready for later in the season when they're really needed.
Yeah, I think the Mavs are in a good spot. I do think that, with the two other major teams in the conference clearly looking for an upgrade, I do think it is worthwhile to keep an open eye. And I had a couple trade ideas that I wanted to throw by you. The first one was, do you think they should go after Kyle Kuzma?
Who?
The Wizards, Kyle Kuzma. NBA champion Kyle Kuzma, to be very clear. Yeah.
It's funny. I did see like he came out and was like, "Oh, I'm very interested in going to Dallas." It's funny because remember last year at the trade deadline, he famously said like, "We're excited about
I'm building something here."
Yeah, we're building something in Washington.
One's the wins this year.
No, I'm not interested in Kyle Kuzma, man. Like for two reasons. I'm just not interested in Kyle Kuzma. But two, what you would have to send to make that work is like that's a type of trade where like it doesn't make any sense. Like no, I'm not interested. Kyle Kuzma's not even worth talking about.
So I'm getting a hard no.
However hard the no can be, I just gave it to you.
So what do you think of Kelly Olynyk?
Kelly Olynyk's interesting. Kelly Olynyk's interesting, and it depends on what it takes to make him work, right? But to me, Kelly Olynyk is, look, when you listen to Mavericks fans, they seem like they're ready to move on from Maxi Kleber. Like if I had to sort of summarize how I think
he averages like 3 points a game.
Yeah, Maxi Kleber had his season high the other day of 11 points, I believe. But it was he was on a heater. But look, I don't have Maxi Kleber out there for scoring. That's the thing.
You better not put it that way. Yeah. You're in a lot of trouble if you do.
Yeah, fair enough. But one, I know that Maxi Kleber is capable of shooting the basketball better than he has. And I'm confident that will come back in some form. To what degree, I do not know. But I think it will be better than it has been. But put all that aside, because this Mavericks roster is beyond the team that made that Western Conference run a few years ago where they needed Maxi Kleber shooting. Yeah. Right? Like with Quentin Grimes and Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson, Spencer Dinwiddie, that's less needed from Maxi Kleber now. When Maxi Kleber's on the floor, he's on the floor for his defensive presence, and all you really need from Maxi Kleber is for him to shoot it well enough, because he's not going to get enough shots. Well, you need Maxi Kleber to shoot it well enough for people to have to respect him standing on the 3-point line and give you space on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is with that saying is he did have his career high of, I believe, 11 points, the classic double-digit game. But the most recent game that he played, played 33 minutes, went 0 for 2 for 0 points.
Yeah. So, no, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, is my thing, like, people, so, look, and I'm not saying this as someone who does not understand where the trade Maxi Kleber folks are coming from. Because for starters, if there is a workable deal that sends Maxi Kleber to Toronto and brings Kelly Olynyk to Dallas, I'm all for it. I just need to know what that deal is.
So I got basically. There's one way to make this deal work, unless you want to start throwing in first round picks. At which point, you don't want if you're paying a first round pick for Kelly Olynyk, 33-year-old Kelly Olynyk, you're a lunatic. So
Yeah.
But there's one trade. It's Kelly Olynyk for Kleba and Omax Prosper. Now so I'm just gonna as you ponder this great trade offer. This is the classic. Is this win now move going to get me over the top? Like make me more likely to get over the top, enough so that I'm willing to give up a developmental project of someone who has potential but may never peter out. Like there's no guarantees with Omax. He has the tools,
I agree.
but there's no guarantee he becomes anything. Even becomes a rotation player in the
He
league.
could be somebody 3 years from now. I'm like, hey, you remember Omax?
Yeah.
But he could also be someone in 3 years from now where you're like, hey, Omax is a badass.
Yeah. So when you do that trade,
I would give it serious consideration. My thing is this: if going back to what we were talking about earlier with the Luka injury, another piece of this, like where you ask me, like if I'm concerned about it being something broader or something that they have to worry about lingering into the season, are they concerned that this is going to be a problem moving forward, like those kind of things. Like once again, like it's the reason I'm not concerned with it is because I have no information to support it, right? Like I'm in Louisiana and nobody from the Mavericks organization is calling to check in with me about the progression of Luka Doncic from his injury. And so but if they have those concerns and they're looking at this and saying like, yeah, we're seriously concerned that this year's not going to be our year because, Luka's not going to be around, then I would be more hesitant to pull the trigger on that, right? Because Kelly Olynyk coming in is about winning right now.
Oh, but if literally right now,
but
not next year, this year,
but if they look at the Luka situation as I sort of summarized it earlier, which is that he has a standard basketball injury and that they're not worried about the shape that he's in, and that they actually see this as a situation where, as a result of his absence, you're going to see players like Najee and Quentin Grimes and these guys getting more minutes, more shots up. You're going to see PJ Marshall getting more shots up. I can't believe I failed to mention him earlier. I think he's probably one of the more important players of this team.
Is PJ Marshall the Super Saiyan?
PJ Washington. Hey, man, you're the one who's got me up at damn midnight. PJ Washington. So like, if they look at this like, hey, Luka's going to be fine. Not only is Luka going to be fine, but he's going to have less miles on his legs heading into the playoffs, and we're going to be able to lean on him even more than we were last year. And we're going to have Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, PJ Washington, all of these guys in full stride, Klay Thompson in full stride, Kyrie Irving in full stride, heading into the playoffs. If that's their position and they feel like they can win now, I do think Kelly Olynyk is a minor upgrade on what you get from Maxi Kleba. I don't think he moves as well defensively on the perimeter as Maxi Kleba does. Like I'm
not the defender, but he's a better shooter.
He's a better shooter.
You're trading offense for defense.
Yeah, you're trading offense for defense. And my thing is this. Like the reason, if I sound hesitant and people are like, dude, Maxi sucks. Like my problem with it is Maxi is really good at, he moves his feet very well on the perimeter. He cannot stay with younger, faster, quicker players, but his length enables him to track them to the basket, funnel them to shot blockers, and even contest the shot himself. He is a difficult person to score against. Yep. Right? He gave, like, I went into the playoffs last year befuddled by Jason Kidd's infatuation with Maxi Kleba. And in very, very, very short order, realized exactly what it was. His ability to give the Mavericks versatility on defense and help them match up with virtually anybody they would face is so understated defensively. And so, like, yes, I understand Maxi Kleba struggles on offense. I think that his offense is needed less this year than ever before. And so I'm still pondering the Maxi Kleba Kelly Olynyk trade, right? Because I don't know that the team needs more offense and shooting. I think that they could potentially get into the playoffs and regret a move like that because they don't have the defensive versatility that they needed and that Maxi Kleba provided. Now, that also goes back to, they know more about Maxi Kleba than I do. If they have some reason to believe that what I'm describing about Maxi Kleba is something that's in his past and that they're not going to be able to rely on it anymore, then yeah, I would make the trade with Kelly Olynyk. And I think that the Omax Prosper piece of that would be interesting to Toronto because he fits the timeline of what they're trying to build.
Yeah. So if we're looking for defensive versatility, I have another one more trade to throw at you, and this one's straight up. It's Kleba with the Mavs' lone second round pick they can trade, which is either from Denver or Philadelphia. So it's going to be a decent second actually, like because both those teams are not as good. What was probably when they expected to be a high 50s second is now going to be probably a low 40s. So you can still find decent value there. Would you trade that and Larry Nance?
You could get a Bronny James in that spot.
You get like two Bronny Jameses there. I mean,
Yeah.
he went 58. You might be able to get like half dozen.
In all fairness to Bronny, like he paid for that contract with jersey sales.
Yeah. But
You said Larry Nance Jr.?
Larry Nance Jr. and the Mavs, only tradable second. Now, this one, I will preface this. This is a trade that the Hawks may not be willing to do. Like they may want to just keep Nance for that. But assuming in this universe, we're going to assume that the Hawks would be willing to trade that. Now,
I would do that trade in a heartbeat.
that was my thought.
The reason I would do that trade in a heartbeat is I think that my intuition is that the Mavericks coaching staff would look at Maxi Kleba and Kelly Olynyk and say, like, yes, he provides us more on offense, but that's not what we're looking to generate out of that spot. What we need is defensive versatility, and Maxi Kleba's ability to guard at the perimeter all the way to the rim and do that without us, really giving up any size is unusual in the NBA, and we like what we like what we get out of him. And so I could see them being more hesitant on the Kelly Olynyk side. Now, I think when you compare him to Larry Nance Jr., and I'm very familiar with Larry Nance Jr. because he was a Pelican, and I've watched him play a ton. The thing with Larry Nance Jr. is I don't think he moves as well in guards at the perimeter as well as Maxi Kleba, but the drop off from Kleba to Nance is much smaller in that arena than the drop off from Kleba to Olynyk. Larry Nance can move his feet, and he is very explosive. So you could bring him in and play him at the 4. Now, he does not shoot from 3 as well as Olynyk. He doesn't even shoot from 3 as well as prime Maxi Kleba. But with that said, Larry Nance Jr. can knock down open threes and help you stretch the floor a little bit. The thing that I really like about Larry Nance Jr. is when you think of him being able to rotate and go into a small ball lineup with him as the sole 5. You can play him from a stretch position, or you can put him in the pick and roll with Luka and have nearly the same threat at the rim with a lob as you get with Gafford or Lively. He is very explosive. He has ups. So the Larry Nance Jr. trade is really interesting to me if they could, if both parties could find a way to make that work without it compromising the core of what Dallas is doing. And the only reason I wouldn't want to really, do anything that would compromise the core is I don't think, that he provides. He's not the body that Gafford is. Gafford is a big dude. He's not the player that Derek Lively is, especially not at the age Derek Lively's at. So I wouldn't want to compromise anything.
He's much more of a 4 than he is a 5. Like he can guard like a small 5 or someone who's not super physical, but like you put him on AD just shoves him under the rim.
Oh, sure. He's not guarding AD, but I'll say this. you find yourself in a matchup against the Lakers, and you have Larry Nance Jr. guarding AD with Derek Lively and Gafford roaming around the rim.
That's a really good line. That's a good defense.
You face Denver, and you have one of those guys playing help side defense with Larry Nance Jr. matched up with Jokic. It's very similar to what you get with when they do that kind of stuff with Maxi Kleba, but I think you're getting a younger, quicker, stronger, more explosive guy who gives you a little bit more on offense. Where I see a little bit of a drop off from Maxi Kleba to Larry Nance Jr. is his ability to, as Kendrick Perkins would say, move those hush puppies out there on the perimeter. Like if Maxi Kleba finds himself on Jalen Williams out there on the 3-point line and Jalen Williams sets in to drive, Jalen Williams is going to get past Maxi Kleba. Maxi Kleba can keep pace with him to the rim, funnel him to a shot blocker, and contest the shot himself. I'm not sure Larry Nance Jr. is quick enough to do that. But he's far more explosive, so he might make it up in the air.
And honestly, like, Kleba's a lot of things, but his reputation is a 3 and like a stretch 4, as the shooting part of it at this point has been kind of exaggerated. We're now in year 4 of him being a below average 3-point shooter. He had 5 years ago he shot 41%. Since then he hasn't shot over 35, and this year he's shooting 29.6.
Yeah. And I think
over 50% from 3 this year on 3 attempts a game.
Yeah, and I think what you're looking at is Kleba shooting around 34-35% from 3.
Yeah.
And the question is once again, I don't think Kleba's out there to knock down threes.
And being reticent to shoot too. Like not like he doesn't want to shoot that. Even if he's hitting 4%.
Well, the thing about his shooting, and I'm not saying that this is what it is, but I would be there's some truth to it at some point. I don't know if it's still the truth, I guess is what I'm saying. But if you remember last year, he hurt his shoulder when he came back in the playoffs. He literally couldn't lift his shoulder up to shoot the ball. So I don't know if there's been some sort of permanent damage to the shoulder that's affecting his shot form, I don't know. Like, that's something that the Mavericks would know. And if it is the case, then somebody like Olynyk or Larry Nance would make a lot of sense, right?
Yep.
But my thing is with Maxi Kleba, if none of these trades happen and Maxi Kleba is able to return to 35% shooting from 3, with the number of minutes and the volume of shots he's going to get, I'm not worried about his 3-point percentage. I'm just worried about his ability to defend. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And can you shoot the 3-pointer well enough that when you're standing out there wide open, you can knock down 1 or 2 to provide some space on the floor? Like, that's really what it's about. It's not about the points. It's about, like, are you enabling other teams to just sag off of you and clog the lane? That's where Maxi Kleba becomes unplayable.
I think that's a really good summary of where they're at. I think you're 100% right about there is potential for upgrade, but I don't think it's a necessity. They don't need to break the bank. They don't need to do anything rash. And they're, if and it's also you have to weigh it against whether you think there can be internal improvement. Like with Maxi, it's more returning to where he was previously. Because if you can get that, then there's probably no need to move it all on the Mavs, given that they have expended a lot of their future assets already, and they don't have a lot of gunpowder left. Making any move, especially if you're tapping into draft equity, is just very precarious for them. They probably need a couple years of conserving their draft assets so they can regain access to future capital, which they're currently being denied under NBA rules.
Yeah, and then the other thing too with the Mavericks is, like, I think they've clearly built a roster that's is clearly title contending. It contended for a title last year without as much talent and depth as it has on it this year. But with that said, like, heading into next year, you would only have 2 question marks. And one of them is a very small, it's not even really a question mark in my mind. I just know that people will bring it up. Is Kyrie will be 33 years old next year. So do you start to see regression there? I've not seen anything thus far that would lead me to believe that there's
He's been fantastic this year.
yeah, he's not on a downward slope. And then the only other question mark is Quentin Grimes hasn't been locked up yet. Everybody else is.
And I expect that they will lock him up.
I agree. And
The
the reason I bring that up is like there's no reason for desperation moves, right? Like
No.
you've got a couple of guys on that team. You've got 3 guys on that team that it is perfectly reasonable to expect them to either progress or be, traded for a better asset. And I don't think that there's any chance of Derek Lively being traded, but he's one of those guys you would expect in year 3 to look better than he does in year 2, and year 2 to look better than he did in year 1. I think you would expect Jaden Hardy to show signs of improvement. He's the one. He's the one who I could actually see being involved in a trade at some point.
He can't be traded this year, but next year, then the offseason, that could absolutely be him being a major piece.
And then the third person is Omax Prosper.